Good morning, guys. Welcome back to my channel. This is going to be a film study look at Mike Green from his rookie season of 2025. Within the context, however, of the fact that the Ravens and every other NFL team, I should say, get to draft a whole new set of players in less than a week. The NFL draft starts on Thursday night. I'll be live streaming at least for Thursday and Friday night on my channel with a significant amount of guests, Ravens, Lions, Seahawks fans. But as far as this video goes, going to focus on, I think I got 6 games film from Mike Green. Annotated or telestrated a bunch of it, as you see here, with a new program called One Sports Telestration or One Sports Analyzer. And the idea here is to take a serious look at Mike Green, what we think he can possibly do in his second season. But really what matters most is what the Ravens think. The talent that's out there for this draft, it's a deep edge position in my opinion. So let's get started with the film study, and I'll have some summary thoughts here at the end. Green will be spot shadowed or highlighted at the beginning of each play. The blue line just illustrates the hash where the boundary side is. So in fact, in this case, he's to the wide side of the field. It's going to be his first sack of the season. So it's a Week 8 game against the Bears, pass rush situation. It's his patented move, in fact, if you ask me, and his patented move from college. I think he's got to establish a primary move in the NFL, meaning something that works consistently. This does seem to be his preferred setup. Cross chop, in some cases, there's little variations of it. It's instinctive for him at this point, if you ask me. The step over, it's always on his third step, and then the chop down with his inside arm. In this case, it's obviously the left arm, and then using the outside arm to continue to clear it. Sometimes it hits the midsection, sometimes it hits the tricep, the elbow. Could be a combination of those, but the point is that finishes off the move. This was his patented or best move in college. I think he's got to develop either something alongside of it, or B, a differential timing with his cross chop. Basically, there's a couple of different versions that you can use, and I think that he's got to think like Danielle Hunter, a guy who like a jazz musician, almost has like his own beat. And when I say Danielle Hunter, when I mention him, I mean a guy who offers the same move, but oftentimes on a differential timing or setup. So we'll focus on film from the Bears game, the Week 8 win in Baltimore. I think 30-16. How active Green can be, quick, especially when unblocked. Here we're getting a play action concept. So the running back is going away from Mike Green, and then the quarterback, in this case Caleb Williams, is going to boot back to his side. The whole offensive line is blocking in that direction to the right-hand side of our screen, the left-hand side of the Ravens defense. And so you can see that Green's, he's got his eyes in there to see where the football is. Sometimes you slow play it, different terms or phrases. Slow play it, don't go until half man, whatever. It's your classic play action boot concept with the quarterback. Oh, by the way, this is the same offensive coordinator that we have now in Baltimore, so we can expect to see a lot of this with Lamar Jackson. The point is, Green is plenty quick. He's plenty athletic. Here shows the ability to redirect and then get to the outside shoulder of Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams dangerous, obviously, out in space. He's able to evade, avoid, or juke, in fact, NFL defenders. And so here Green, possibly overcompensates to get to that outside shoulder, or I should say maintain outside leverage on Williams, basically force him to stop and then throw the football. In this case, far too early for what the scheme called for. Another opportunity from that same game to just talk about athleticism, quickness, agility, range perhaps, if you will. It's a quick game concept from the Bears and Caleb Williams. Well, there's a quick route attached to it, I should say, at the bottom side of the screen, exactly where Mike Green is located. So we're talking about, this route here, snag concept, is, 3-step oriented or quick game oriented, if you will. Quarterback gives the quarterback, I should say, an opportunity to get the ball out of there immediately. I think that at times Green could possibly improve his reaction time to the snap. All right, doesn't have anything to do necessarily with this play, but I think there's some times where he's less quick off the ball than we would like him to be, given his talent. What we saw on film from in college. I do wonder about his ability to get out of this stance when he's in a 2-point stance. Having said that, I'll give you a couple examples later on where he's in a 3-point stance, and the first thing he does is kind of pop up. But here we've got an opportunity to talk about not anything special as far as the pass rush. Caleb Williams getting rid of the ball fast, but Green's ability to get to the ball when he's unblocked or when there's nothing in his way, I should say, right? He's aggressive, very tough and strong. I'd like to see him. I'm sure that he has improved his physical strength during the course of the offseason between his rookie year and once rookie minicamps start after the draft. I'm a big fan of what we drafted with Mike Green. Having said all of that, throughout the course of watching this film, I will express some of my concerns about him not having a consistently quick or fast get off, basically his response time to the snap being a little bit too slow. I'm not saying that it was anywhere near along the lines of Oweh's reactions to the snap when he was a rookie, because that was incredibly slow, and that was in Oweh's Penn State film. But he being Mike Green, is too explosive, if you ask me, to be as slow off the ball as we see on film sometimes, at least in a 2-point stance. I should have said in the beginning that most of this is just going to focus on pass rush. I did have about probably 12 plays cut up of run game defense, mostly end zone angle film here. Again, his pass rush moves that he relies on. And to some extent, I'll talk about his awareness of the running back to his side or not. In this particular case, A, he has the running back to his side. And B, there's a stunt happening on the opposite side of the Ravens defense. I'm talking about between Kyle Van Noy, who will kind of get upfield and pick the left tackle, and then Trenton Simpson, who will kind of loop in here a little late. So there's a lot going on the screen. Hopefully you guys don't mind the magnifier. I tend to think that it's a really cool option in the One Sports program. But in any case, getting back to the running back stuff, sometimes I feel like Green is a little less aggressive, a little less downhill, attacking, if you will, when he's got the running back to his side or when there's a stunt happening away from him. So I'm talking about the stunt that happened here that I diagrammed a moment ago between Van Noy and Trenton Simpson. And it makes me wonder if some of this, almost this kind of less aggressive rush, isn't part of the scheme, isn't coached into him because he's opposite of the stunt, meaning the Ravens were hoping or expecting this to get home. I feel like we're definitely less aggressive in 2025 as a team overall. Not just talking about the 4-man rush scheme, but talking about what we're doing with guys from an edge defender standpoint. Is it as simple as, hey, let's turn Mike Green loose and let him attack? I think sometimes. I do believe that he's got better physical gifts than we saw at times on film from his rookie year. It doesn't get. I do not see him getting swallowed up like this unless he's kind of slow playing things. In my opinion, on this particular snap, he's dialed back some, whether that's by scheme or whether that's by something that the tackle presented immediately post-snap. I'll be honest with you, some of the film, I am unsure of how much responsibility to give to apply to Mike Green. Meaning there's a loss on the and that's one of the reasons why I hate pass rush win rate, because I think there's plenty of times during the course of an NFL game and over the context of a season or the entirety of a season where some of these guys that are edge rushers or defensive tackles are actually just trying to occupy people, whether they're part of a stunt, blitz, or not. Clearly, on that particular rep, Green was not. Green will be more in attack mode here off the left-hand side of our screen. I do wonder if he plays better from this stance on the right-hand side of the defense, where he can use this left arm, to cross chop or long arm frame like you're kind of see here. It's a little bit of a wider alignment versus the tight end Njoku, who Baltimore's obviously brought in at this point for a visit. Spot shotted one more time. The sack is going to occur from Van Noy. I will say this: there's plenty of film, plenty of reps, snaps, where Green is a little bit slower off the ball than I think he should be, and B, his move isn't as aggressive. This is not one of them. He turns the corner here because the tight end doesn't chip him and gets right into the tackle with his inside arm. He kind of gets lost there a little bit because of shading, but frames the tackle up. It ends up being a sack from Van Noy. I do like the move. I think that we need to see more speed to power from him in 2026, being Green. Part of that could be pad level, and I think getting back to, you can see the hand there a little bit, the inside hand placement with the inside arm. Getting back to the stance, I wonder if he wouldn't be more explosive, have a slightly faster get off, and a lower pad level, if you will, playing out of a 3-point stance. Basically, I think the first part of the first rationale, first piece of rationale that I would offer for that is I'd like to see some type of primary move. His go-to at this point has been the cross chop, and I feel like getting him to the point of attack, getting him upfield a little bit faster, is in the Ravens' best interest and his own. Who knows what Minter and Weaver have in store. But in any case, we're moved backwards a little bit in terms of the season chronologically. Week 3 against the Lions. All the skills and everything is there, right? The power, the strength, the aggression at times I think was dialed back by design or scheme. You get an example of it here. This was a tough game, to be honest with you, for Green. Matched up with Sewell or Taylor Decker, the left tackle for Detroit. But in any case, this is a split zone look. So he's going to be left unblocked. There's going to be a collision that occurs between him and Brock Wright somewhere in this area here. And you just get an idea of the strength that Green has. Now, Brock Wright stands up, holds his ground enough, but you can see that Green is able to power through and drive Brock Wright back into Jared Goff's lap. And that really is the primary reason that you get an incompletion here. I can make these magnifiers, or zoom ins, whatever, make these boxes bigger for next time if it's an end zone angle view. If it's annoying or difficult for you to look at, feel free to let me know in the comment section. In any case, all of that is there. All that we need, is there when we get him to going downhill. Now, the thing to mention here is that, he's unblocked, right? So he gets a full head of steam. I think we got to get him in a better stance and a faster get off. It may not actually, Minter and Weaver may not actually want him in a 3-point stance. Maybe they've seen the film. Maybe they've seen enough film to say, hey, we think we can play him in a stand-up or a 2-point. The learning curve last year, but in particular this game, was pretty steep. So it goes beyond just, the moves you're planning, the stance that you're in. Tavius Robinson happens to be in a 3-point stance here, really almost a 4 or 4.5, or 3.5, and then Green is obviously in a 2-point stance over there. But in any case, he's spot shadowed on the right-hand side of our screen, matched up against Taylor Decker. He kind of gets jumped here. There's a lot to improve on that will be improved on, I'm sure. Counters, speed, stance, speed, get off, etc. But the game experience is the fact that he got over 700 snaps last year is important, if you ask me. There's not a deeper pass set here by Decker that's like off at like that type of angle. This is more jumpy, if you will, and it's early in the game. And I think it's just a veteran, in this case Decker, saying, okay, I'm going to give you a different look early, such that you've got to think about it the next couple of times that it's a pass rush situation. So I'll slow it down a little bit. I'm talking about the angle that Decker's left foot took, stepping to Green, as opposed to moving, back on this angle with some type of more vertical pass set, if you will. When Green got jumped last year, especially early in the season, he didn't seem to be able to counter it. It almost looked like, he had some type of move possibly planned for that snap, but since the tackle jumped him, caught him by surprise, and basically interrupted his flow completely. In the 6 games I watched, I would say that I had film of that happening 4 times, with possibly a 5th iteration of it being something where I think Green, wasn't necessarily tasked with rushing the quarterback in any case. I'm sure that those guys in the offseason, he's definitely been working in the offseason on his moves and his agility. And the coaching staff is going to work on the reactions, his counters, but the gamesmanship is what I was trying to get to there. Only going to show 1 rep of it, of him being jumped. The instruction that he gets from Weaver and the entirety of the defensive coaching staff, I think, is obviously going to be important. This will be the same matchup. I think this is into the second quarter. However, Green spot shadowed or highlighted off our right-hand side. Same matchup against Decker. I think it's like a 2nd and 6. Or a 2nd and 8. But in any case, it's more of a true pass set by Decker. You only really see Decker's left foot here. So again, I can make these windows a little bit bigger if I wanted to. But what you're going to see here is he gets hands on Green. And Green doesn't necessarily have a counter. I think Decker's waiting a while to get the hands out. There's more of a vertical set. I would like to see Green. It seems to me as if Green's moves are all off the same timing. I'd like to see a little bit more direct path sometimes. Essentially, even though I don't think he's ever going to be a great bull rush guy against the bigger, stronger, bulkier offensive tackles, I'd like to see him have more snaps where he's moving directly at the tackle in a way that threatens either A, an inside move, or B, a bull rush. The inside moves were definitely something that I felt like was deficient, but I'll be honest with you, once I got to like the third or fourth game, I decided that I felt like most of the lack of inside moves that I saw was by design from the scheme. Essentially, Zach Orr and the defensive staff didn't give him what I would consider to be a two-way go. There were many times, many snaps, I should say, where, in my opinion, and this is just going off my belief and seeing so many different examples or iterations of it, Green was told by scheme, by design, get an outside rush, and you can use whatever move you want, but you may not use an inside rush on this particular snap. Same matchup against Taylor Decker from week 3. By the way, the Lions have since released Taylor Decker. I'm sure that most of you guys are aware of that. But in any case, Green is highlighted off the right-hand side. Once again, set up to the field. It's my opinion that he plays better to the right-hand side. But here's an example of what I'm talking about here. Decker is... he's not jumping here. You actually miss Decker completely because of the zoom-in function. As far as if we didn't have the magnifier effect, Taylor Decker is essentially right there. But it's not a flat, jumpy type move, and it's not as much of a vertical threat. But you do get an example of a counter by Green going with the cross chop with the inside arm, and then using that same inside arm to frame up Taylor Decker and drive him back towards the quarterback. It's a third down completion to Sam Laporta. I think this is the drive in the third quarter that ended up being like an 18-play drive. But in any case, you can see the timing of Green's steps, all right? So off the snap, 1 with the left foot, 2 with the right foot, 3 with the inside foot, and then as it stands, the way that it should work out, here comes the cross chop. So Decker retracts his hands around, kind of circles around him, and then Green counters that. With the inside arm, he recognizes, okay, Decker was prepared for that, so let me long arm him and push him back into the quarterback. And as soon as the magnifier disappears, you get an idea of, he's not really near to the quarterback, but at least it's an opportunity for us to see that Green understands what's happening in the middle of the play, and he's able to try to, quote, counter that move from Taylor Decker. A somewhat similar dynamic here, except now Green is lined up off the left-hand side of the defense, but the right-hand side of our screen. That, of course, means that he's matched up against Penei Sewell, who handles this in a somewhat similar fashion that Decker did. He'll basically, he being Sewell, will basically retract his arm on the cross chop attempt from Mike Green. I do wonder if Green is left-handed, to be honest with you. It's a little bit deeper pass set by Sewell. And again, I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier. I'll revisit here a second time. Danielle Hunter is a guy who has the same move, but multiple versions of it. So in this case, Green, 1 with the inside foot, 2 with the outside foot, 3 with the inside foot, and then here comes the chop. And you can see the same timing. Sewell is, retracting or circling his arms around, basically his right arm, Sewell's outside arm, so that Green can't chop it. And really the rep is over at this point. I think Green's counters are better when rushing from the right-hand side of the defense, which is why I wonder if he's left-handed. He seems to be able to run the counter quicker and in a stronger fashion. B, I'd like to see Green utilize the differential timing that Hunter often does with a cross chop or even an inside move. It basically comes off of like a 3.5 step instead of 3-step. But that's a topic for another day. Now, it must be said that Tate Radledge is also converging here. And as Green tries to reverse field a little bit, he gets decked from Taylor Decker, right? Goff ends up scrambling out of the pocket. Owe is upfield against Taylor Decker. This is obviously before Owe gets traded. And then Goff throws the football away. I think there's also a flag on the backside of the play on the Ravens defense. But in any case, I think that Green, not just having a high-quality chop move, which he already does, I'd like to see his timing be changed. I'd like to see a second move off of it that is essentially still a chop, but is a differential timing so that some of those guys who retract their hands, he can kind of catch them when they bring their hands back in. All right, well, moving forward here chronologically to later on in the season, I think this might be the only rep that I show in this video against the Jets. Actually, I believe there's a couple more. My apologies. But it's against Fasciano, okay, the second year left tackle from Penn State. And it's another little cross chop here, but again, he's off the right-hand side of the defense, so the chop is being executed with his inside hand. In this case, it's his left. 700-plus snaps, Did he get consistent pressure over the course of 2025? No, that's obvious. He did not. But the one thing I will say is he's got a move that they can use to establish. And you can see how he grabs with the outside arm, he grabs the tricep of Fasciano while both of his feet are off the ground, he being green, and then he's able to use that to try to catapult by. Doesn't get to the quarterback. I've got a little distance measuring thing in this new program. So, less than a yard. It's pretty cool. It's actually amazing the way it's done. It utilizes the yard lines and then the hash points. So you make marks on the screen or in the program, you make marks on the hashes and then the yard lines, and then it can determine distance for you. In addition, it can determine time elapsed. Pretty amazing fashion. But in any case, you can see that it was a cross chop from the right-hand side. Roquan's on a stunt here too and ends up being free. I think that if this is Green's foundational move, I really believe that he's got to at times play a little bit more direct into the tackle. Basically, either get stronger, more explosive, be in a lower stance, be lower when he makes contact with the tackle, and offer some direct bull rushes or bull rushes that he counters into something else. I just don't know that running the cross chop as many times as he does per game is going to beat these tackles if there's no other threat. But again, I feel like there's a lot of snaps where he's being told you have the freedom to use whatever move you want on an outside rush path. But what you cannot do here is you cannot rush to the inside for whatever reason. That would ruin the integrity of the rush there. No one's told me that. I didn't read any articles about that. That's just me watching a lot of film during the season and then a lot of film here during the off season and noticing how often or the high propensity with which Green has to run the same type of move that we've seen here over and over again just in this video. It's kind of a pick screen, if you will, by the Jets on a third down that allows this receiver to get free of Nate Wiggins for a pretty big gain. I think this is on third down. Same game against the Jets, matched up with Fasciano once again off the right-hand side of the Ravens defense. A little bit of a jumpy type move here from Fasciano. Unfortunately, with the way that I did the magnifier, you actually lose perspective of that. So got to figure out a way to try to handle that or mitigate that. But in any case, you'll see the move here and how quickly the contact occurs between these guys. And so what I'm offering or suggesting is more opportunities for Green to be the aggressor. Basically, when he was jumped in the on the snaps that I saw, he didn't seem to be ready or have a counter for it. Perhaps it's because it occurred so infrequently. It's also possible that veteran offensive tackles looked at him and identified some type of pattern where they could interrupt his pass rush movement. But in any case, he's the lack of punch showed up often when he was jumped. And I would like to see him, if you look at a game as not just a snap-by-snap basis, but collectively over time, I'd like to see him be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more of a direct path at the tackle. Of course, he could still lose, but at least threatening with a bull rush would, in essence, possibly do the same thing to the offensive tackle that you've seen happen to him twice here, which is Taylor Decker and Fasciano jump him, and then Green really have no answer for it for the rest of that play. Some of that, I think, is possibly pad level related, which goes back to the stance. I'd like to see him in a little bit lower stance. I'm not trying to be too harsh on a rookie. After watching 6 games, I'll be honest with you, there was some frustration for me, possibly with the way that he was deployed. The reality is we've had a lot of instability there. If you look at the last 2 years, 24 and 25, if in some other alternate universe, Mike McDonald had stayed in Baltimore, do I think that Owe in 25 and even Van Noy in 25 would have been more productive in Baltimore? Absolutely. Do I think that Mike Green would have had a more productive rookie season? Yes, I do. But the reality is what the Ravens have done since Mike Green has been acquired as a second-round draft pick, they traded away Odafe Owe and then traded for Dre'Mont Jones and then tried to acquire Max Crosby and or Trey Hendrickson, if you believe that story or don't, that Eric DeCosta was trying to package both of them. My point is the clock is ticking already on Mike Green, and he's got a great opportunity with Weaver and Minter being in the building to improve exponentially in year 2. Another snap against Fasciano, but it's really, just the generic or patented cross chop move from Green. I think he's got to take advantage of this opportunity. Basically, you've got Trey Hendrickson, Tavius Robinson, Mike Green, and then presumably there'll be a rookie along with Adisa Isaac. What if you get to the trade deadline this year and we don't have production as a pass rush and or individually with Mike Green? I think that he's got to really have a sense of urgency, in my opinion. But in any case, this is a 3-point stance. It ends up, working out. I'm not utilizing this one to say, oh, this is all he needs to do is get in a 3-point stance, because really he's popping up here, to be honest with you. He looks like a guy on this rep right here who's used to being in a 2-point stance, who's being asked to play in a 3-point stance for this one particular snap. In my opinion, I'd like to see him, a little bit lower out of the stance, but in any case, it's the same move. 1, 2, 3, and then the cross chop. Fasciano tries to lean into it, and then Green is able to control that outside arm and then squeeze by him with the low pad level, get a quarterback hit on Tyrod Taylor, just as the ball was being released. I love the magnifier function. I'm not sure that I'll be able to use it, for every video, obviously, because we're not always going to be talking about, pass rushers or offensive linemen. But for this function, I feel like it's great. Again, you guys feel free to let me know, A, what you think of the editing function there with the magnifier, but B, also Green in a 3-point stance. If you think that it would, give him an opportunity to be a little bit lower, which could possibly improve A, the bull rush, and B, any speed to power moves that he uses as well. One thought that occurred to me recently, thinking about Mike Green and his progression this year, was I'd like to see no cross chops in joint practices and or any preseason games that he appears in. It's basically force him to use as many other moves as possible to try to just accentuate the cross chop when he does actually go to it. All right, so there's another stunt opposite of Green this time, number 1. Number 2, he does have the running back to his side. The running back, you're going to lose perspective of him a little bit, but he's going to veer off to the outside, make it look like he could potentially chip or help Fasciano with Mike Green. Something I wonder about is what Minter's going to do with the edge defenders, meaning are we going to be strong and weak, field and boundary, or right and left? I think there's something to talk about here with Green, an opportunity to talk about that maybe he would play better right and left. But it's a patented move for Van Noy, kind of stunting to the inside, and then he's going to pick or basically run into the right guard here full steam, and that's going to almost be like a 2-for-1 because it allows Dre'Mont Jones to loop around. Green's move is interesting here. I almost feel like he's reading the back because he's kind of skipping to power or hesitating to power, but he's not gaining any ground, number 1. Number 2, you see he's popping straight up in the air. I'm not saying that there's not ever any use for that, don't get me wrong. But for a moment, look at Green one more time, popping straight up in the air. Very unusual movement. But compare that to Van Noy. Van Noy is more direct on this particular move. What I'm saying or advocating for is more of this type of angle from Mike Green that you see from Van Noy here. Now, the reality is Van Noy's part of the stunt, right? So this is the 2-for-1 that's happening. The right tackle, Membao, and the right guard, who I believe has since retired, but I could be wrong, are occupied by Van Noy. And then Dre'Mont Jones going to loop around. Fasciano is able to anchor down such that Green can't really get away from him. One thing I did notice as well during the course of the season, or the games that I watched, I should say, the last week and a half, is that Green wasn't used on a ton of stunts. When he's in the game in these pass rush situations, they're using Van Noy and Dre'Mont Jones, and it makes me wonder if it was predictable. I'm not saying he's not any good on stunts. I just mean that the more film I watched, the more convinced I was that they were just deciding to stunt or play games on the other side. And Mike Green oftentimes had a restriction with his rush. Basically, you have to take an outside move, or in this case, it was a skip to power. I think that Green could be used in a more variable way than we saw in 2025. It seemed very simplistic. I would say it's on second watch, but for me, it's probably like the third or fourth time that I've watched these plays. I just decided to do a film study for Saturday morning. Actually, what I want to do is do a film study every week on a different player and put it out on Saturday morning. A little bit of what I'm talking about here, even though Green is in a 2-point stance, he's, again, off on the right-hand side of the Ravens defense. Dre'Mont Jones is the other edge defender, along with Kyle Van Noy. So it's kind of like our pass rush group against the Jets. I think we're into the fourth quarter here. Like I said, I want to do one of these every week, but not next week after the draft. Obviously, we'll all be busy. That'll be day 3 of the draft. But in any case, on his fourth step here, kind of veers to the inside and tries to walk Fasciano back into the quarterback, and he actually kicks out with his foot. It's difficult for you guys to see. There's his foot, and he's tripping Tyrod Taylor, in fact. I'll let this run a couple of times slow, if you will, so you can see what I'm talking about, how he's able to get a little bit more push, but I think it's because of the ground that he's gaining off the snap. And then one more time to mention a point that I talked about earlier. Again, Green is over here to the right-hand side of the defense. You've got Van Noy and Dre'Mont Jones. And just notice what they're doing. Essentially a reversal of the same pick that we just saw on the previous play. Trips the quarterback and ends up getting one of his, I think, 3.5 sacks on the year. I think that there's probably some serious film study work that's been done in the offseason by Minter, Weaver, everybody to try to get Mike Green, to see what they can do best with Mike Green. When I said earlier that I think the timeline is accelerated, I meant it. I'm a huge fan of what we got last year in the second round there, right? The Ravens, or at least many of us fans, did not expect him to be there. We were hoping probably that Baltimore addressed offensive line, right, late in the second round after taking Malachi Starks. But to get what was considered to be a first-round talent that late was tremendous. It was a great chance to grab a high-level talent, and we were all excited to come out of the draft with 2 first-round players. Personally, I'll be honest with you, I did not have Starks rated as highly as other people did in terms of the discussion, or some people's commentary was, he fell to us at 27 or 28 or whatever it was. I didn't think he fell. I thought he was drafted in the early part of an appropriate range. I thought 28 to 38 was the place, the area, the range where Starks should be taken based on his 2024 film. Green, we were shocked he fell at that far to late in the second round, right? There was other issues there, obviously. The reality is we did not get first-round play from Mike Green in 2025. We got the type of play commensurate with basically where he was picked. In fact, I would say, a little disappointing at times. I like the prospect still. I think 2025 was very beneficial. He got a lot of snaps, a lot of experience. There's film out there for him and the coaching staff, like I said, Minter, Weaver, and others to evaluate. What worked? What does he already execute efficiently, right? We know he wants to get after the quarterback. That's why I focused on pass rush here. Because he'll be judged by that. Eric DeCosta will be judged by that. I do think we draft another edge defender this year. Maybe round 2, maybe round 3. There's a lot of needs on this team. Adisa Isaac he's healthy right now, at least. I think Adisa Isaac takes some snaps from Mike Green? No. There's no justification for that at all. Having said that, Minter likes to use a lot of guys on defense, particularly the edge defender position. In my opinion, watching the Chargers defense, it looks like Minter prefers to keep guys as fresh as possible. I think that's a good thing. At this point, we have, Tavius Robinson, Trey Hendrickson, Mike Green, Adisa Isaac. I think we draft a guy, and I think that does bring in competition. More directly probably for Adisa Isaac as far as snaps and that number 4 guy, if you will. But in my opinion, Mike Green's got to improve quickly here. The Ravens front office brought in Dre'Mont Jones last year. Granted, it was after trading away Oweh. They gave him Oweh a long time to develop, right? And it should be said, look at the difference between Oweh in Baltimore and then in L.A. last year, right? Having said that, he produced 10 sacks in 2024. Odafe Oweh, Van Noy was, I think, 11.5 in 2024, and then a significant dip last year. Everybody's performance went downhill in 2025. That makes sense, right? The further you get from high-level coaching, the more regression there will be, right? Think like I'm old enough, maybe some of you guys aren't, but think like Mike Tyson when he went away from Kevin Rooney and the direct lineage that Rooney had to Cus D'Amato. The further Tyson got away from Rooney, the sloppier and less precise he got in the ring. Totally different guy, 5, 6, 7 years later, because poor coaching and poor preparation. I think we'll see improvement from Green in a variety of ways. Different coaching staff, higher level of detail, instruction, and preparation. I think Weaver's a huge asset here, or talking point, if you ask me. The experience that Weaver brings as a D-line guy, and then a DC in Miami the last 2 years. I think Weaver's here for a year, maybe 2, and then is a head coach. So the motivation factor for Green, I think, for Weaver is extremely high. Green could be a beneficiary of that. I think that his advancement's got to be sped up, I'll be honest with you, from watching the film. Do I attribute some of it to the scheme, the lack of preparation by Zach Orr, what Orr was asking Green to do? Certainly. Right? However, we'll only get, another 6 or 8 weeks in the regular season, of that. Because you get to the trade deadline in 2026, and let's say the Ravens are playing well, right? Like, hopefully competing at the top of the AFC, but at minimum, top of the AFC North. We're playing well, but only Hendrickson and Madubuike are getting to the quarterback. Green's got to be looking at this like, I got to take advantage of this opportunity right now. Especially if Eric DeCosta drafts an edge defender for depth, quote unquote, but they've already tried to bring in 2 guys in the offseason. What if it's true that Hendrickson and Crosby, if you believe that to be the case, what if it's true that that's what they were going to do? Where would that put Mike Green on the depth chart? If you had a Hendrickson and you had Crosby, Tavius Robinson, and then Mike Green, there's a case to be made that he's 4. So his snaps will be reduced consistently. I get it that some people don't believe that. In my opinion, the clock is ticking here faster than maybe Mike Green thought, or maybe we as fans would like to admit. It's the perfect time, however, for Minter and Weaver to show up. Better coaching, second year for Green, stronger, experienced. The film will help. This was my attempt at a serious look at Mike Green and how that projects with the draft in less than a week. I think it's an extremely deep edge class. Where the Ravens are drafting is different, obviously, than it was last year where they got Green late in the second round. We got 14 and then 45. I don't know that the Ravens are taking an edge defender at 45. If they want some serious pass rush talent on the outside, they may have to. My gut tells me they will not, for 2 reasons. I think that we've got to improve the offensive line and the interior defensive line. And in my opinion, 14 increasingly looks like a spot where the Ravens go with, as high-level talent as possible. The phrase BPA is often utilized. I think there's a lot of talent out there in this draft to grab at 45 to try to supplement the offensive line at 45. And to me, that puts the Ravens possibly out of seriously improving the pass rush through the draft. Basically, I think there's going to be a run on the edge defender position between like 25 and 40, 42, 43. I wonder if by the time you get to 45, the group of edge defenders available is just not the guys that the Ravens want, that they think would actually get on the field much in 2026. Hopefully I said all that in a way that makes sense to you. If not, feel free to let me know in the comment section what you think of my thoughts. I believe the edge defender group here in this draft offers significant talent. I think it's got a lot of guys who will be good in year 1, but then, improve over the course of their first 4-year contract. Mike Green is overlapping with anyone that we draft. It makes me wonder if we wouldn't be better served to look at like a Jayshawn Barham at 80 or even beyond that. If he's available in the 4th round, that's an A+ pick, someone who can play edge defender and who can play inside linebacker, would basically provide depth for the defense in a way that Malik Harrison did. And what I mean by that is someone who each week can be on the active roster because he can play inside linebacker and outside linebacker. I almost wonder if the Ravens' plan isn't something like that. But in any case, if you guys enjoyed the video, please let me know in the comments section. It ended up being a long one. It's focused on Mike Green, and hopefully what you would consider to be a serious look at his pass rush moves, what worked, what didn't work, maybe what projecting he needs to fix or improve upon. I think you got to get him in a better, lower stance, possibly a three-point stance, and hopefully getting off the ball quicker as a result. Appreciate you guys' time, man. If you think other Ravens fans would enjoy this film study look at Mike Green, as well as some discussion here at the end about the draft, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.